Hello and welcome to the Last Looks podcast, a show where we catch up with talented hairstylists and makeup artists in the film and television industry. We'll pick their super creative brains and find out all the good stuff. Join me, your host, Jamie Lee, in finding out what's what in the hair and makeup departments around the world.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
John Blake's Wigs and Facial Hair has been providing the highest quality wigs and facial hair to the film, television, and live theater industries for 15 years. Our human hair wigs are low density and hand-tied on Swiss lace to give the most realistic and natural appearance that is undetectable in HD and 4K content. This small, family-owned company has grown to fill a vital role to artists across the globe. We provide an unparalleled customer service experience that is rare in today's retail market. Our facial hair pieces come in 17 different styles and colors that are designed to precisely mimic natural growth and coloring patterns. They are made from blending human and yak hair in order to create the most realistic texture and appearance of men's facial hair growth. We are grateful to be celebrating 15 years of being an industry leader and a vital part of your artistry.
And now, our feature presentation.
Okay, it's Oscars time, and of course, the Last Looks podcast is all up in that business. We have 5 bonus episodes where I'll be catching up with all 5 teams nominated for their superb makeup and hair work. All teams are asked the same set of questions, but of course, they all have very different answers. The Oscars makeup and hair lineup for 2023 is All Quiet on the Western Front, The Batman, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, Elvis, and The Whale. The 95th Academy Awards will be presented at the Dolby Theatre in Los Angeles on Sunday, March 12th. Thanks for listening and supporting the podcast, guys. It really does take a lot to get all these teams together to be able to bring these bonus episodes to you. With everyone working and shooting all over the world, as you know, it's hard. It certainly takes time and effort, so for that, I'm thankful to you, the listener, and all my guests. And a big shout out to our sponsors. We thank you for your continued support. Sponsors of our Oscars special episodes are Hands Down Refresher and Sanitizer, John Blake's Wigs and Facial Hair, Luxe Skin FX, Melanie Mills Hollywood, and Neo Cosmetic Cases. I hope you enjoy these special episodes as much as I did putting them together.
Pictures up. Last looks. Rolling. And action.
Welcome to the Last Looks podcast, team.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Yes.
And congratulations on your Oscar nomination for your work on the film Black Panther Wakanda Forever.
Oh, Jamie, thank you.
So let's start with some introductions. If you could each tell us your name and what you did on the film.
I'm Camille Friend, and I was the hair department head on Black Panther Wakanda Forever.
And I am Joel Harlow, and I was the makeup department head on Black Panther Wakanda Forever.
Fantastic. So I would love to know, when you guys heard the news that you'd been nominated, what was that like? Like, talk us through it. Were you watching the announcement? Were you listening to it? Were you busy at work? What was going on? Camille?
Well, I was at home waiting because, you know, they tell you, like, have cameras up, do this, do that. So, you know, I had been beautifying myself to be beautiful, semi-beautiful as I could at 5:30 in the morning. And, you know, the people were at my house. So you have to, like, be presentable and make, you know, have some donuts and croissants and tea and coffee. So, you know, I was doing all that and sat there to watch. And I was just like, you know, this is my 3rd time. And, you know, Jamie, listen, you went with, you know, on the first one, like, you know, everything that happened up until, you know, we didn't get nominated. But we had a nice ride on the first one. But, you know, I was just expecting, we'll see what happens. So they said, you know, All Quiet on the Western Front. They said Batman. And when they said Black, that's all I heard. I didn't hear my name. I didn't hear anything. I just heard Black. And, you know, it's a great celebration of the film and of our careers. You know, it's a great time. It's a great time. That's all I can say. Yeah. It's a good time.
Joel?
Yeah, it was, it's a nerve-wracking experience, you know, the days, you know, the week, days leading up to the announcements. And, you know, having gratefully gone through this a couple of times before, I know how it can go. So what I try to do, I know when the announcements are coming out, I believe it's like 5 a.m. Or 5:15 LA time, Pacific Coast time. I try to avoid it, because I know that if we're nominated, there will be, friends and family will send a bunch of texts. There will be a flood of texts. So, if your texts start coming in, twos and threes and fours, by the dozens, whatever, then it's probably good news. If you get one text, it's like your agent going, "Hey, sorry, you got robbed." But so I went down I was on the East Coast. I was in Atlanta shooting a film. So I went down to the gym and I was trying to take my mind off it. And, as the clock is ticking, somebody turned on the TV in the gym. And there they were. Like, okay,
You're
great.
trying to play it cool.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I'm like side-eyeing the TV. It's like, here it comes. Oh, there's a commercial. And so now I just stopped and watched it and, was overjoyed, obviously, when I saw our name up there. And then I texted my wife. I said, time to buy a dress.
Yeah. That's the next thought. What are we wearing?
Exactly.
That's awesome. So let's kind of dive into a couple of characters from the film. If you guys can talk us through makeup and hair wise, like from research and development through to daily application.
Okay, I'll start off with this. Early on, talking to Ryan Coogler and just talking to him about, how this film was different than the first one. And one thing was a big discussion about this was the film about women and about relationships. So, you have a lot of women in this movie. And so it really started with Queen Ramonda, and then it started with Shuri. And the theory behind it was Ryan came up with is in West African culture, people cut their hair in mourning. So what we were thinking about is how would their hair, specifically Ramonda and Shuri, look after they would have cut their hair after a year. So that's how I went into designing it. So I knew that Angela wouldn't have her locks, that we would totally change her. And I really got inspiration from Ruth Carter, the shapes of Ramonda's hats. She wears those hats like a crown. So it's something that I got inspiration from in the shape of her hair. So, keeping her hair in a 4A texture, but keeping it in the same colors, with the blondes and the platinum colors, and just making sure that it was coming off of Angela's face like a crown. That's how that look evolved. And Shuri's has evolved from, in the first one, she was funny. She was a kid, she was the funny girl. She was a comic relief. In this one, she's a young woman who's finding herself and, somebody who is trying to figure out how to lead a nation and being in mourning for her brother all at the same time. That's a lot to bear. So we kept her the same in the sense of the sides of her head were shaved and the sides and back, but we took out the braids and we had a wig made of it's like a 4C texture, and then two strand twisted it. So that's what we did for her. And then other characters like Lupita, who plays Nakia, I wanted to see her in something totally, totally different. And we went the opposite with her because she wasn't in Wakanda in mourning. She was in Haiti in mourning. So we just wanted to take her out of who she was and made her somebody who was a little bit different. So we came up with giving her locks, but still keeping her locks in what we call the signature Nakia red hair color. So and took her in and gave her just a whole different type of look. And to also, I always like to do things that we haven't seen this actor in another movie. So giving her a whole different look that you haven't seen on screen with her, just to name a few.
That's awesome. Joel?
Yeah. I think, I want to touch briefly on Okoye because even though her look didn't change that much, the approach to how we did her head tattoo did change with the addition of digital scanning and printing technology. Because on the first film, we had sort of a rudimentary stencil that we put on her head. It wasn't super accurate because it was all done by hand. And then each of the triangles of that striped red and black pattern were added in the sort of the standard tattoo transfer technique. Then it took a while to, finish out the lines. Then you would do a layer of her base over the whole thing, seal it, and ultimately it ended up taking around 3.5, 4 hours to get her into that makeup. And then at the end of the day, because now you've got glue on the top of her head, it took another hour or so to get her out of it with a lot of scrubbing. So it wasn't the most pleasant thing, for her, comfort wise, on a day by day basis, having to go through that. So I knew on this, what I wanted to do was address how we did that tattoo. So what we did is we took her digital scan as opposed to her life cast. Jeff Bauman had done, who's our visual effects supervisor, had done a scan of her on the first film. We took that scan, and Rod Maxwell, who is my digital expert on this, mapped the tattoo onto that head form. And then we broke down the tattoo into 2 different sets of overlapping stencils. So what would happen is, and now these would conform perfectly to her head without the distortion of, having a traditional life cast that you were working from. So I would lay down the stencils in a sequential order, spray the black, airbrush the black, then put down the stencils with the red lines and airbrush that. So in the end, roughly 35 minutes, 40 minutes later, you had the entire tattoo done, with no cleanup necessary. You go over the top of that with her foundation and you're done. And at the end of the day, since what you're dealing with is a tattoo color, it comes off quite easily. There's no glue involved. Another benefit of that was that Denai didn't have to shave down to her scalp. She could leave a little bit of stubble, so we avoided any sort of razor burn, ingrown hair problems that we may have had on the first film. And that was a godsend, because her scalp remained, healthy and fresh, and that was really from the onset. That was one of the things that I wanted to tackle first, is I wanted to make her more comfortable. I think obviously the one of the other biggest characters in this film is Namor. So for him, he's got distinguishing features from his comic book origins. He's got the pointed ears, he's got the arched eyebrows, he's got wings on his feet. I first addressed the ears, and I've done my share of, pointed ears, certainly. But I think that these on Panache were probably the best ears that I have done.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, and that and I did ears for Leonard Nimoy on J.J. Abrams' Star Trek reboot. So, I mean that for me is saying a lot.
Yeah.
But it was something about the anatomy of his actual natural ear and the way that the sculpture fit onto him that really made it work, in my opinion. I didn't go as extreme as the comic book for the arched eyebrows, because we wanted him to live in a real world. We were drawing heavily on the Mayan culture, so we didn't want to go too comic book with him. But then, of course, you've got, he's got wings on his ankles. And we devised, ultimately, that was all done CG, but we did have a pair of wings that we made that he could walk around in that were invisible, from the front, from the back, from the sides. Looked like it was just growing out of his ankles. Then of course there was all the telekineal.
Yeah.
And that both Camille and I worked closely with Dr. Aldana, who was our Mayan cultural specialist, to make sure that what we were doing wasn't just interesting for the sake of being interesting, but that it could be traced back in a lineage to actual Mayan, cultural looks. And that translated to the gasket prosthetics, in both the flashback sequence and, the modern sequence. So there was a lot. There was, and then, like I said, the source material, the comic books, factored heavily into those characters as well.
It's awesome to have somebody at your disposal like that to just ask any questions or give you information. That's awesome.
It's invaluable. Yeah. Because in doing these hieroglyphics on, let's say the face gaskets, the face breathers, when they breach the surface, they're wearing, sort of these masks over their mouth and nose so they can continue to breathe water. There are glyphs on the nose bridge. And I could come up with something that looked neat, but if it wasn't culturally accurate, I would discard it, and he was the one that gave us the thumbs up or thumbs down for that.
That's cool. Camille, did you want to talk about any of the underwater stuff that you needed to do with the hair?
Oh yeah, we can talk about the telecanal. Like again, Dr. Aldana was really instrumental in helping us because, one thing as you can't, just call up, I call it, 1-800 Mayan. It's not there. Like you have to really figure out these looks. And, even the internet is not correct. It's a culture that's really been something that you haven't really seen on camera. So it was something that we really needed somebody who's done the research and can give us factual things. And the same thing in my process with Joel also did is talking to him and showing him hairstyles and saying, is this correct? Is this correct? What would they have, what would they have used for products? What would they could use in the hair? Like making all of that make sense, but keeping it grounded in reality. That was what was most important. And I'll tell you, Jamie, one thing that we learned early on during the camera test is we had all these wigs that we put in the water, and we figured out that you couldn't put any product in it because they got in the water and then it left a big white cloud in the water. It's like, oh. And Nate Moore was like, Camille, what are you going to do about that? Because that wasn't good. It did look good, not a good look. So, we had to really think about it and solve it. And, we went to something like a long time ago. I remember Jake Garber had turned me on to this little trick. And basically we took, spirit gum and we really diluted it heavily. And then we made it like into a glue hairspray. And so using that as almost like a hairspray to keep the hair up. It's something that once the water touched it, it wasn't just going to turn into a big white cloud of product in. Plus, it just helped the hair, really, really hold up, rubber banding things like, 2, 3, 4 times, also sewing things down where they would stay down or stay up in the water. All of those things collectively we use. And something that we use, which is kind of funny, flexi rods or hot dog rods for people who are old like me, we took those and we covered those with hair. So a lot of those we would use inside the internal structure to hold things up, or we use it on the outsider structure to wrap things around and to keep it lifted up in place. So it doubled as looking like hair, but then it was actually a flexi rod that we can bend and move and put in and use it in a lot of different ways in the whole telecanal world.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they were really cool. I remember seeing them outside the trailer making these things, and they're really cool. It's hopefully at the symposium there'll be some of those wigs there because they deserve a close look because they're pretty impressive.
Oh, thank you, Joel.
Of course. Yeah, no, they're beautiful.
Thank you.
I love it. So this happens every year, and it's, it is art that we are creating. You always look at the 5 films and you're like, how do you even start to figure out a favorite? And I guess because it's all art, but it's so many different mediums, like everyone's work is so different. It's always so interesting to look at that. But I just wondered from your guys' perspective, how do you feel your work is different from your fellow nominees?
Any awards, award category, like any of the categories, it's like, how do you compare? No 2 shows offer the same obstacles or opportunities. So it's really difficult to say, okay, well, who's the best? You really can't do that. It's not possible because this could be the best for, in the context of this film. This could be the best in the context of that film. Films aren't the same. The makeups aren't the same. I know that both Camille and I have, a tremendous amount of respect for our fellow nominees. And being a nominee, they say, when you're nominated, you consider yourself a winner. And there is truth to that because there were our peers who chose to nominate us amongst these 5 teams, for these 5 films. And now it goes out to the entire voting academy. And, you really don't know, because as an example myself, it's like I get to vote on all the categories, right? So, it's like sound, best sound. I'm like, well, I don't know. It's like, I know that sounded good and that sounded good, but I don't know what to look for.
Yeah.
So I will opt out of that category because I feel it would be a disservice if I just said, well, that's my favorite movie, so I'm going to vote for that. You know what I mean? It's really hard to compare I think anyone's work to anyone else's work. And I'll pass it over to Camille, but I'll just say that I'm very grateful to be amongst the 5 teams.
Well said.
No, I agree 100%. I think, all the movies are great. When you get to this point, like, who do you vote for? It's really about your preference and what you like, but I think everybody has done an incredible job. And at this level, I feel like we're at the Super Bowl. And I mean,
Yeah.
win or lose, it's both still great teams. And all the movies are, if you look at too, all the movies are really different. Like, so
Yeah.
it really is up to your taste, your aesthetic, and what you see. So, we just hope as we go along, we just hope that people like us enough to vote for us, but I mean, but there's so many other beautiful movies and beautiful work,
Yeah.
I'm in awe of even the other work that all these other artists have done. It's incredible. And even when I hear about their work, like, I'm still in awe. I love to hear about the work and how the process, that's why I love your show, Jamie, because you really get to break it down and people get to really hear the truth on what it takes to do what we do. So that's
Yeah.
what I can say.
I love it. I love hearing about challenges. So if you guys could let me know maybe one of your biggest challenges during filming, whether it was in prep or actually while you guys were shooting.
Camille, do you want to go first?
Well, for
Right.
me, it's definitely the water. The water
Yeah.
was a big challenge. And Joel, you can correct me. I can't even remember. Like, we were maybe supposed to be in water, maybe like what, Joel, like 3 weeks or something.
Yeah.
And we ended up being in it, what, 3 months?
Yeah.
So like the budget went out the window because it was like, okay, we budgeted for this, but then the budget went out the window. It's like, oh, we're in it, for 3 months, and we're flying people from Miami and things like that. And I think one thing I want to say too is, in this movie also, like, I give my hats off to our stunts. Like, you have to know, everybody who was Tala Camille, everybody was of Latin descent. So, everybody was represented correctly in this movie. And that's something that's important to me. And, and I think it's important to our community and people working, even behind the camera, to know that sort of thing. But, really, it's the water. The water is challenging. It's a lot of work, making sure everything stays on, everything for us, it's not moving that much. But, too, it's endless. And the water is brutal. Like, the water is something that I've learned to really respect. Because it's a living, breathing thing. Don't underestimate it, because as soon as you underestimate it, it's going to kick your ass. Being serious, you can't underestimate it. Every day you got to go in like, hey, this wig has got to be sealed on. It's got to be glued on. The black color has to be in. Like, all of those things have to be done every day. And you can't, because if you get a little air bubble in there or a little pocket, water is coming under that wig, it's flooding under the wig, and that wig is going to be off. So every day it's, it's got to be sealed. It's got to be done correctly. That's all I'm going to say. Yeah.
Love it. Joel?
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo that. The water, I mean, like I'm very fond of saying, well, water erodes mountains,
Yes.
and water, it's like, that's how you think you can take off makeup with water,
Yeah.
So trying to fight that, it's a beast, and I think, yeah, water was definitely the biggest challenge. By the time we were doing a lot of our big telekineal sequences where they're head to toe blue, it was winter in Atlanta. So,
Yes.
I'm going to echo what Camille said about, props to the stunt department, and also throughout the fact that these people were very scantily clad in the middle of winter, being drenched in water, and it wasn't supposed to be winter when we started, but, because we were, we pushed, and filmmaking, it's like, it ebbs and flows. So
Yeah.
by the time we got into the big, the big sequences, it was freezing out there. We're starting, at the, the early morning hours, 2, 3 in the morning. So I'd make it a point of going back to the background every day before my actors came in, and thanking not just my team, but also the stunt team, because, we're out there bundled up in jackets and stuff. And then you feel incredibly guilty when you're coming up to somebody in a parka, toasty warm, with like your electric vest on, and you've got a Hudson sprayer full of water, and you're like, sorry, here you go.
Yeah. And don't you dare say, oh my God, it's so cold.
Yeah,
No.
exactly. It's like, it's like I would like drop my jacket just to go up and spritz people because I
Yeah.
felt like it's like that's a bad look coming up to somebody, incredibly warm and then, basically it's the ice bucket challenge, and then now go perform and fight and I know that
Exactly.
your muscles are frozen and you can't really move that well, but there's that and there's the fact that we had to paint them all blue and that's a constant chase through the day. No matter how well your makeup stays on, no matter what product you pick and how you choose to seal it, you're still abrading it throughout the day. You're in combat sequences, you're climbing, there's stunt work, so there's ropes that abrades the skin and just takes the paint right off. And we knew that Jeff wasn't going to have a lot of time on the post end of this. So as much as we could fix in camera is what we tried to do. But yeah, I'm, like Camille said, water.
And tell me, we always hope to learn something from an experience. So what are some standout lessons you may have learned from shooting the film?
Yeah, I mean, I think the standout lesson for me is just pick the right team. Because you rely on your team so much. No one person is, creating everything you see on camera, whether it be makeup or hair or whatever, so for me, it is pick the right team that has your back, a team that can do things better than you can. Because ultimately, there's no ego in this. You're just trying to deliver the best product possible, the best look possible, for me, the best makeup possible. And if there's somebody that can do it better than me, I want to hire that person, so that I think, in a nutshell is, not a lesson that I just learned on this, but was made abundantly clear on this.
No,
Good reminder.
that's a really good point. I think again, what your team is really important. And I'm going to say this to Jamie. I missed you, Jamie. If you guys, those of you who don't know, she did Black Panther 1 and she was my key and we had a great time and everything that we established in 1, we just took and rolled the ball even further on 2. Yeah. So, the team really makes a big difference. And like on this one, I had a younger team. So it was a little bit more challenging for me, especially in the beginning. But I love giving people the opportunity. And once everybody got going, they did a good job. And I think, again, it's especially on one like this, you have like so many different teams of people. You have first team, you have the water team, you have all that. And it's something that, you just have to almost like stretch yourself out. And like on the weekends, I would see Joel there on the weekends when, like second unit and the water unit, because they're establishing things. So, I think the team has a lot to do with it and getting along, even when you don't want to get along. And this is a professional place. It's a professional atmosphere. And even when you don't like somebody, they don't have to be your best friend, but they're your colleague and you have to show respect and kindness and you have to get the work done inside of that. That's all I'll say to that.
Well put.
Absolutely. Professionalism. But talking about teams, I just want to give you guys the opportunity to give a shout out to all of those that helped you. Now's the time.
Oh, awesome. I'll start. So my team, I want to thank everybody who worked on this movie as far as, the hair department and the barbers and even, our outside people. So Evelyn Feliciano, Marva Stokes, Amber Mayer, Victor Paz, Jason Simmons, Derek Washington, Nikki Wright. I'm going to keep going. I like to thank also our wig makers, everybody who made our wigs and helped us out with that. Natasha Lasky, like to thank her. And, all the people who help us just, in the everyday, Nappy Star Dreads, Unite, Hask, Design Essentials. Then there's a lot of people who helped, make this movie happen. So just everybody who helped us, with this movie, I just really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'll say Friends Beauty Supply. We can't forget Friends. Yeah. The boys over at Friends, thank you. Our shipping day and night, baby. Day and night.
Right. And Joel?
Yeah. I mean, there are so many people that contributed to this, from our background makeup artists that we leaned on heavily. But, there are a few people that I want to, to call out my key, Kim Felix Burke, Lena Anderson, Anderson, Chris Diamantides, Ashley McGuire, who handled all of our background, was incredible. Robert Henderstein. I also had a shop going. So Gil Liberto, who I don't believe actually got credit on the movie and basically ran that shop for me. I think something happened where he missed out on his credit. So here it is. Richard Alonso, Rod Maxwell, Josh Sachs, Josh McCarran, Mark Ross, Rachel Bongard, and then I want to, that there are a lot of people, but I want to finish this list with the name of a gentleman that I only got to meet on this film. And unfortunately, he passed away before the movie came out, AJ Crimson, who is a 1 in a million soul. And we had a lot of laughs together in the trailer. And I miss him. I just did my last show in Atlanta, and I missed having him there.
Yes, definitely. And I want to thank all of our Atlanta crew. Sometimes people forget, like, we went to Atlanta, everybody from Atlanta who worked on this movie and helped us get to where we are now, like, to an Oscar nomination. I want to thank everybody in Atlanta who really, really helped us. I want to just tell them how much we appreciate them.
Yay. Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, guys, a big congratulations again. Being nominated for an Oscar is pretty incredible. So enjoy the ride, and thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie Lee.
For links to see more about our guests, go to our Instagram at The Last Looks Podcast or our website, thelastlookspodcast.com. If you want to keep up with new episodes being released, be sure to subscribe through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Google Play, YouTube, or any podcast streaming platform. And remember, if you're enjoying the show, share it. The Last Looks Podcast would like to thank Brett Stanley and Sabrina Castro. The song Fun Time by DJ Quads. Thanks for listening. Until next time.
That's a wrap, people.